morning. Good morning, everyone. Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome once again, and many thanks for staying in this plenary session. Just allow me, right after the opening of this event, also to welcome you to Geneva for those visiting here from other geographies, and also to welcome all participants, both in person and online, to this first plenary session, and that's an honor in itself, the first plenary session of the World Resilient Recovery Conference. So many thanks for joining. We have a fantastic lineup of speakers now, also to speak about resilient recovery, and I will be introducing them to you as well to make this panel very rich in perspectives and also rich in the feedback that we will receive. I have to say that it is my honor also to moderate this first plenary session. My name is Carolina Fuentes Castellanos. I'm the director of the Santiago Network Secretariat, and I will be also explaining a little bit about the Santiago Network and how we can help support also resilient recovery efforts. But before that, please allow me also to give some housekeeping announcements for the running of the session. If you're watching online and you wish to follow the session in one of the 3 United Nations languages, you can select the preferred language via the interactive program. So we have those interpretation services. Many thanks to the interpreters that are available, and you can also select them via the interactive program. Also, just to remind participants in the room that you can also access the interpretation services using the headsets that have been provided on your seats. So please also use the headsets as needed. We also encourage you to use the social media to share your perspectives and insights from this session. And please use the hashtag #ResilientRecovery as you post your social media. So let us make this session also as rich in perspectives as possible, and also to indicate that we are not foreseeing interventions from the floor, but you are very much welcome to place your comments and your feedback on the chat. We will make sure also to address that feedback later on, and it will be very important for us also as we summarize the outcomes of this session. Now, with that, please allow me also to go through the objective of this session. It is a real privilege, as mentioned, to open this first plenary session of the World Resilient Recovery Conference. This is a session that will set the stage for the technical sessions. We will be looking also at what already exists in terms of recovery practices, and that will also help us identify where are the gaps in terms of finance, in terms of implementation, in terms of planning. While looking at the gaps, we will also be looking at successful practices and case studies. What has worked and needs to be repeated, and also what can inform the lessons on the way forward, and how we do resilient recovery in the future. I would like also to remind everyone of the title of this global recovery platform, and also, of course, of the Global Platform 2025, Every Day Counts, Act for Resilience Today. And in order to act for resilience today, we need to be informed of what already exists and how the experience that we have can guide our efforts and our work on the way forward. So that is the purpose of this session, to make an assessment of what exists on resilient recovery. And we will be starting, before moving also to the panel, will we be starting with a presentation to set the stage that will be provided with many thanks for that as well. That is a presentation that will be provided by Mr. Sujit Kumar, with vast experience on humanitarian coordination, development, and climate change. Many thanks for your presentation that will be walking us on an overview of the status of recovery. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Carolina, for that warm welcome. and Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. After that excellent start from on the previous panel, our eminent speakers have already alluded to some of the problems, some of the issues we are facing in terms of taking recovery or making recovery more effective and more in practice. So let me begin with my presentation, a brief presentation on where we stand and where are the gaps and how do we move forward from here. The first slide, please. Is here. So let me begin with some figures, some statistics, and give a stark reality, or rather a known reality, I would say at this point, that we know very well that disasters are becoming more frequent and far more costly. The trend, which is in the graph you see, is in an increasing order, and if this is the trend which remains, in the lifetime of the Sendai framework, which is from 2015 to 2030, we are likely to see a 40% increase in number of disaster events. And as this trend surge, what we are also seeing that disasters are becoming more costly, the economic losses are going, skyrocketing. It also tells us that when we include, if you recall the recent launch of the Global Assessment Report 2025, it tells us that the annual average loss is becoming around 180 to 200 billion US dollar, and that doesn't also account for all the indirect losses we talk about. And if we include the cascading impacts, the indirect losses, and all those intangible losses, this may well be over 2.3 million yearly. So that's really a worrisome figure. As losses are increasing, so are the recovery costs. And just to give you a couple of examples here on some of the recovery needs assessments which were done in the recent disasters. In Pakistan floods 2022, the recovery needs were 16 billion. In Turkey, Syria earthquake in 2023, the needs for recovery alone was a staggering 103 billion US dollar. Bangladesh, similarly, 581 million. Malawi cyclone, from the cyclone, the needs assessments were around 680 million. So these figures shows us that this is on top of what is already being lost. So this could be perhaps calculated as a loss or rebuilding, and that's really a worrisome figure, again. And of course, the midterm review, we should be happy that there are a lot of progress happening, but at the same time, it very clearly reminds us that we are far from being prepared for effective recovery. Build back better, we often talk about build back better. It still remains as a concept in many cases, and is still not being applied consistently. That's what the midterm review tells us. And I think our SRSU was mentioning that the perpetual nature of some countries being in recovery mode. As the frequency of disasters increase, the number of disasters increase. In some countries, there is a disaster after disaster before even they recover. In one of the conferences, I recall a country actually clearly told us that they feel like as if they are in a boxing ring, where they keep getting knocked out before even they have a chance to survive from the last blow. So these are some of the realities, and this tells us why preparing for recovery or recovery readiness, which is the core of this conference today, is so critical for us. So what exactly is holding us back? Where do I show this? Okay, I clicked a few times. So over past years, in preparation of this conference, as well as in preparation of our work on recovery, we have engaged hundreds of countries in consultations through our master classes, number of webinars and regional consultations. And what they tell us that there are some very critical and very specific gaps still remain and still remain to be addressed, such as in the governance, which includes both institutional structures, regulations, regulatory environment, and so on. There are fragmented institutional arrangements, unclear roles, lack of coordination, lack of community participation, and missing regulatory frameworks, and so on. In terms of our financing and capacity gaps, which was also said in the beginning in the opening ceremony, is that there are no prearranged or layered funding systems available. There are financing gaps, there are capacity gaps. So these gaps, which comes from all those consultations, you may perhaps say that these are not new. What's really needed is that how we are really tackling these gaps, how we are in a systematic and structured manner, really address these issues, so that these are not still, remains as challenges, as gaps. And this is where I believe, the work around the recovery readiness is really critical, because you're preparing countries to deal with these gaps. And my last slide here, I see the timekeeper is reminding me I'm up. So the good news is that after all those consultations, we have some way forward. And what's the way forward is that there is a recovery readiness framework being prepared. This conference outcome itself talks about 10 priority areas where it will allow countries to look at systematically how do we address recovery challenges. And some of those 10 priority areas, which we will discuss in detail in the thematic areas in the technical sessions, as well as in the lead up to this or after this conference, we will look at how we are together with you going to implement these priority actions. So from recovery readiness assessments to capacity building to recovery financing, multi-stakeholder partnership, engagement of private sector, livelihood and economic recovery, reconstruction, housing reconstruction, localization, public awareness, all these priority areas are there. And these are not theoretical priority areas which we are saying that this needs to be done. So that behind this, there is a strategy for how countries can really implement these priority for action. And this is what we are looking forward from you, that what solutions are emerging, how do we move forward on this, and how do we support countries. I think that's where also our colleagues from Santiago Network are there, who will tell us how you are, countries can tap into different support, technical assistance, and so on. And this is where I think together with you, if we manage to get these actions accelerated, we will perhaps get there in terms of really making sure that Build Back Better is included in all our recovery efforts, and we are moving forward with an effective recovery recovery practice. With that, I thank you very much.
Many thanks for that overview, Mr. Sujit Kumar Mohanty. It was very helpful also for us to understand how the assessments of gaps can inform resilient recovery when there is preparedness and readiness behind it. So there can be also a proactive approach on how to address those gaps that you were noting also take place in a wide variety of levels, at the institutional level, at the level also of the information, the regulations, etc. Many thanks for that very useful overview that will help us also identify the priorities and actions forward. And for that, we move now to our panel. And I'm very pleased to introduce our distinguished panel here that will also provide us with some of the examples and experiences that they have had in their respective countries. We have Secretary Renato Umali Solirum, Secretary of the Department of Science and Technology of the Philippines. Most welcome. It is an honor to have you here. We also have Honorable Leon Lundy, Minister of State Office of the Prime Minister of the Bahamas. Also an honor to have you with us. And Mr. Krishna Vatsa, Member, National Disaster Management Authority of India. Also very good to have you here, and we look forward also to your perspectives and insights as we move forward in this panel. To begin with, I would like to invite Secretary Renato Umail Solirum, who has a vast experience on public service, scientific leadership, and disaster resilience work, to share with us the experience of the Philippines. The Philippines faces recurring disasters, such as typhoons, floods, and volcanic eruptions. What have been the key lessons that have been learned from past recovery efforts, and how is the country improving its readiness for future events?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Disasters in the Philippines are not isolated incidents. They demonstrate a wicked problem. These problems are complex, interconnected, and constantly evolving. They have no single solution, and every attempt to fix one aspect often reveals new challenges. The Philippines' exposure to natural hazards has shaped our country's experience and expertise, revealing our vulnerabilities and resilience. And let me answer the question based on two important lessons. The first and foremost lesson: prevention and preparedness as the first line of defense against the devastating impacts of natural hazards. In 2024, the Philippines experienced an unprecedented incident: 6 tropical cyclones in just 1 month, including 3 super typhoons. Despite the severity, the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council reported only 174 deaths, far fewer than historical averages for super typhoon. The success was due to ongoing investments in early warning systems, community education, and proactive planning. However, damages reached nearly $415 million, showing the urgent need for stronger infrastructure and better development policies that can withstand future disasters. We believe that protecting lives and the economy starts with science-based systems. We see disaster risk reduction as essential for sustainable growth. When we protect our wealth, we create more opportunities for everyone. Our goal is a Philippines where every community, city, town, and province has easy access to clear, understandable hazards and risk information, and this data should be available, accessible, and actionable for all Filipinos. To achieve this, we introduced the GeoRisk Philippines, a comprehensive geospatial system that combines data on various hazards and exposure. This platform improves how we assess risks and plan for resilience at the local level. By providing reliable data and analytical tools, we bring technical expertise closer to communities. The information is free and easy to access for every Filipino and local government unit. Through this, we also promote better coordination and cooperation among government and non-government agencies. So, the Philippines champion information as a basic right and need. Accessible and practical scientific information is the cornerstone of the resilient first line of defense. The second emphasizes that recovery is a strategic entry point for prevention and mitigation, an opportunity to build back better. The Philippines has recognized that simply relocating affected communities to new housing programs is often insufficient, as these efforts frequently fail without the support of livelihood opportunities and comprehensive social systems. With our innovation under GeoRisk Philippines initiative is the development of the PlanSmart Ready to Rebuild web application developed by the Philippine government and the World Bank. PlanSmart Ready to Rebuild is an innovative planning tool which can automate planning and leverages science-based data and geospatial platforms to generate comprehensive rehabilitation and recovery plans efficiently, enabling local governments to make smarter decisions faster. It can systematically generate a rehabilitation and recovery plan using science-based data, calculation tools, and putting results in pro forma planning document. Hence, we can develop this plan before the disasters and quickly after. Feedback from our local governments highlight the significance of this tool. They find that PlanSmart enhances their ability to anticipate recovery measures and seamlessly integrate disaster risk reduction in their broader development framework. So by embedding resilience into our recovery efforts, we are not only rebuilding communities, but also laying the groundwork for a better quality of life, ensuring that resilience is not merely surviving, but thriving.
Many thanks. Many thanks for those insights and also for signaling the importance of information as a basic right and need for all people. So many thanks for that and also for the efforts and work that are setting example also for others to follow. I would like also just to make a follow-up question on how the loss and damage agenda can help accelerate recovery financing and resilience building efforts in developing economies, based on your experience.
Thank you. Financing is crucial to translating our resilience strategies into tangible actions. The Philippines advocates that disaster risk reduction and climate action are inseparable. There are two sides of the same coin. So financing is the bridge that transforms strategies into tangible outcomes. So we host the Responding to Loss and Damage Fund Board. We champion greater coherence across global frameworks in the Sendai Framework, Paris Agreement, and the SDGs. But we call for transparent, grant-based, non-debt creating finance that reaches the most vulnerable, addressing both slow onset and sudden disasters. By officially recognizing the financial and social toll disasters impose on vulnerable nations, it paves the way for accelerated recovery, financing, and resilience building. This agenda ensures that developing economies and vulnerable nations receive the support needed to not just recover, but to bounce back stronger towards sustainable growth.
Many thanks also for those follow-up reflections on how the implementation of actions can also impel sustainable growth in developing countries. Many thanks for the leadership and also for those very concrete examples of how information is important, but also the action that is taken based on that information. Many thanks for that. I would like now to invite Mr. Leon Lundy, also to share with us the experience now in the case of the Bahamas. And many thanks also for your presence here and for bringing also the experience from a small island developing state that is highly vulnerable to hurricanes and other climate-related hazards. How has the Bahamas institutionalized recovery readiness into its disaster management framework? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Castellanos, and good morning to everyone. It's been a whirlwind year for the Bahamas. A year and 2 months ago, we enacted the DRM Act, and since then, we have been steadily advancing reforms and taking deliberate strides to institutionalize recovery readiness and embed a comprehensive and proactive approach within our disaster management frameworks. An independent disaster risk management authority, as one of the first actions under this act, the Bahamas launched a standalone DRM authority. The new authority brings enhanced autonomy and agility and is empowered with a clear and comprehensive mandate that spans the entire disaster cycle, in addition to financial protections. Most importantly, it gives recovery a permanent institutional home, a departure from a historically more response-focused environment. To support this institutional shift, we have anchored disaster management, including recovery, in strategic sustainable financing. Our comprehensive financial strategy is mandated by our Disaster Risk Management Act. It included an establishment of the Disaster Emergency Fund, which is in place, and the funding for responding to and also recovery. This fund is regulated and prearranged, not ad hoc or politically influenced. We recognize that recovery can't be achieved by one agency. The DRM Act established an interministerial committee on disaster risk management, a subcommittee of cabinet chaired by the Prime Minister and composed of senior ministers across finance, housing, health, infrastructure, and other key ministries. This ensures recovery decisions benefit from whole of government coordination and do not silo resilience in just the DRM sector. This July, we will be publishing new disaster coordination protocols. This will define assessment procedures, outline recovery sequencing, clarify agency roles, and identify financing triggers. They will be backed by guidelines and performance standards, drawing on international best practices, but tailored to meet Bahamian realities. We also realize that by reducing central impacts, we can jumpstart recovery. The DRM Act of 2022 now mandates public body disaster plans, inclusive of continuity of operations planning. These plans, which are currently under development, include restoration timelines, staff redeployment protocols, internal triggers, financial benchmarks, and analyzing of multi-hazard risks. These will ensure that essential services can be maintained or rapidly restored after a disaster. This DRM Act also mandates interagency risk mapping, zoning protocols, and the development of a risk database, allowing for more informed recovery and reconstruction decision-making. This will allow us to rebuild quickly and wisely, with safety, risk, and resilience factored in, an opportunity to build back better. So, it's still early in our journey, but we're moving with purpose, and this past year, we've been laying a strong foundation, developing the systems, standards, and partnerships that make recovery readiness real and make resilience a permanent part of how we govern. We are determined to keep innovating, keep learning, keep shaping a Bahamas that is safer, stronger, and ready for whatever lies ahead.
Many thanks, Minister. Many thanks for sharing the experience of the Bahamas and also how you have institutionalized addressing a disaster at the country level. It is very important, as you mentioned, that there is now a new agency, a new authority as well, that is fully dedicated to cover the full cycle of a disaster. And this, of course, done in coordination with other agencies. As you mentioned, is not only one agency, the one that will be able to respond to the challenge, but also the interministerial coordination setting that you have is setting an example on how institutional coordination can help effectively address disasters and preparedness, very importantly. Many thanks for that. As a follow-up, I would like also to hear from you now when it comes to governance and policy innovations, which have been these key innovations on the policy and governance side that have helped improve post-disaster reconstruction efforts in the Bahamas. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question. As a new authority, we haven't yet faced a major reconstruction test, but our emphasis has been on preparation, putting policies, coordination mechanisms, and standards in place now, so we're not improvising later. We're introducing a reconstruction recovery framework that will guide how funding is distributed for residential rebuilding. This gives us a clear, transparent structure for how we prioritize and support households in recovery. We're also updating the National Building Code to ensure that new construction, especially in the wake of disasters, meets higher resilience standards. This supports a Build Back Better approach that reduces vulnerability over the long term. Interagency risk-informed zoning is underway, so future development is better aligned with the realities of hazard exposure. This reduces the chances of rebuilding in high-risk areas and strengthens the relationship between planning and resilience. Our whole-of-government approach is a key enabler through mechanisms like the Interministerial Committee, as you mentioned, which includes agencies such as the Ministry of Works and Transport. We are breaking down silos to ensure reconstruction draws on technical, logistical, and community expertise across government.
Many thanks. Many thanks for all that experience and also for sharing very concrete examples on how also communities are engaged and the support that is being provided at different levels, including also when it comes to codes and standards that go down to the level of the household. So there is preparedness that is built in across the recovery, not only at the government level, but also at the household level, because it needs also to trickle down different areas and different levels of society. So many thanks for that experience. And now we're very pleased as well to move to our next speaker. And many thanks as well for your presence here and for sharing the experience as well from your country. We have Mr. Krishna Vatsa, who will be also sharing with us the experience in India. We would like to hear specifically how India has institutionalized its recovery preparedness in national development planning to ensure that post-disaster reconstruction is faster, more resilient, and inclusive. Thank you.
So thank you very much for the invitation, and it's an honor to be here. The first thing that I would like to say is that the access to prearranged finance and a national ownership and commitment to recovery are the most important prerequisites for institutionalizing recovery and reconstruction. Now, coming to the national experiences, in India, recovery and reconstruction would always be supported by the multilateral development banks, the World Bank, ADB. We have more than 15 such programs implemented in different states following large-scale disasters. While these programs serve the purpose of implementing recovery and reconstruction, they could not institutionalize recovery, and they could not kind of develop long-term technical capacities in this area. So one of the most important recent developments that we have seen is that we allocated 30% of the National Disaster Risk Management Fund and the State Disaster Risk Management Fund to recovery and reconstruction. So it is an earmarked funding. It's a distinct window of finances for recovery and reconstruction. So it implies that there are always resources available for recovery and reconstruction, whether they are large recovery programs or small recovery programs. Here I would like to make another point that recovery programs are always important, whether they are large or small. It should not be the case that the smaller disasters are given go by, while larger disasters are actually followed up with recovery and reconstruction. So that's the first point, that we have allocated resources for recovery and reconstruction on a long-term basis. How should we access the recovery and reconstruction funds? It is only through assessment. So we have to institutionalize a process of assessment, and that is the post-disaster needs and assessment. And now, in the last 2 years, we have conducted about 15 PDNAs across the states. So that gives us a very comprehensive account of damage and loss. They give us a lot of data on various sectoral impacts, and they provide the essential foundation for developing recovery programs. Without the right kind of assessment, we cannot develop recovery programs. So now we have the assessment and the data available for recovery, and then we have kind of a fund flow for the recovery and reconstruction. It's released in tranches. The progress of the recovery program would be monitored, and the assistance would be released subject to the progress of the recovery and reconstruction program. As we develop recovery and reconstruction programs at the local level, the state governments are required to set up institutional framework and also develop technical capacities. You have to develop recovery programs. You have to develop detailed project reports, submit it, only then can you get the resources. So the access to prearranged finances actually initiates and supports a large number of the downstream activities, and that actually supports recovery programs across the country. So this is how we are actually initiating the process. This process is still in development, and I would say that it would take another few years to stabilize it, but we would like that recovery and reconstruction, which is a very distinct area, becomes a very embedded, very intrinsic part of the recovery of the disaster management system of the country. Thank you.
Many thanks for sharing those experiences and also speaking to how important it is to make funding available and earmarking resources. So there is always a resource when it comes to resilient recovery and also for the planning for that. That's a very valuable experience. We also know that India is a leader when it comes to South-South cooperation. If you could please elaborate on your plans and the plans of India in terms of South-South collaboration in resilient recovery, that will be very helpful.
In recent years, India has provided disaster assistance, which is not just limited to the immediate humanitarian assistance. We have supported certain countries towards recovery assistance. It implies that we have provided larger assistance for the reconstruction of housing, social and economic infrastructure, health infrastructure, and that also has necessitated the creating a national capacity for providing long-term recovery assistance to the countries. In recent past, we provided assistance to Sri Lanka for the post-conflict recovery, Bangladesh after the cyclone Aila, and the most important example in the recent past has been Nepal earthquake, where the government provided a huge amount of support for housing in 2 districts, and then reconstruction of schools and hospitals. So when we are supporting recovery and reconstruction assistance internationally, we also need to develop the essential systems within the country to undertake these operations. Thank you.
Many thanks. That also speaks to how important is collaboration when it comes to the sharing of best practices and making sure also that we replicate the successful examples and the successful cases. And that is really also well done when it comes from another developing country. So South-South collaboration is particularly beneficial in this respect. Many thanks also for the leadership in that regard. And I would like now, with all the feedback and the perspectives that we have heard from our speakers, also to go back to our first presentation for Mr. Sujit Kamar, also to help us shed light on some of the recommendations now that we have looked at the overview of actions that are taking place in different countries, in different contexts as well. What would be some of the recommendations based on the existing recovery practices? Many thanks for sharing those insights with us.
Thank you. Thanks, Carolina. Let me answer this question not just as UNDRR. Let me answer this as a practitioner in this field. I think we heard excellent interventions from our colleagues, excellent practices already happening in countries. What we must think about is that we looked at the gaps and challenges and problems, and as I said in the beginning, it's not new. Perhaps in many conferences we heard about this. Where we really have to think about now is this the whole idea of a shared responsibility. We cannot, not a single agency can do it alone. Not a single country can do it all alone. So we need to have this shared responsibility, whether it's international organizations supporting or regional organizations supporting countries, or even countries supporting each other, whether the north-south, south-south, in all kinds of collaboration. That is where I think the success of these recommendations lies. So I can come up with, we have the 10 priority actions, but let me be also, be very blunt that you must be thinking in every conference we see outcome document, there are a bunch of, recommendations, there are a bunch of, priorities. So what happens after that? And this is where I think we have to really critically think that how do we at the end of the day support those countries who are, in need? who are not able to put these recovery practices, this pre-positioning finances, on all those structures behind it, all those architecture behind to make it really successful. Not all countries are at the same stage of development. They need different levels of support. How we collectively can channel that support to them. I think in terms of having, whether it's, we call it the recovery readiness framework or different tools and techniques, what we use is available. We can, make best use of it, but how do countries really, implement it? How can we channel that support to them? Not only as UNDRR, there is, International Recovery Platform, there's a multitude of organizations, part of it, who can provide that support. So there has to be an architecture that supports these kind of support to countries, and this is where I think the success factor lies, that if we really want to fulfill the gap which is mentioned in the midterm review, and we with all those consultations we came up, the solution moving forward has to be coming from within us. Peer support, supporting with a shared responsibility, and that's where I see the success. I will not go into the priority action list. I think we will discuss about them in the coming sessions. But this is, I think, as a practitioner, I would say, how do we really support countries to get it done? So I stop there.
Many thanks, Mr. Sujit Mohanty, Chief of Intergovernmental Processes in UNDRR, for those reflections and also those very concrete examples on how support can be provided. Thanks for flagging as well that there is a need to have an architecture that can provide and assist countries in their efforts also towards resilient recovery. As part of that architecture, I would also like to speak very briefly about the Santiago network. The Santiago network that was established in 2019 to fill a critical gap in the loss and damage agenda. We were established as a central pillar of the loss and damage ecosystem to catalyze technical assistance in developing countries from organizations, networks, and experts that have the experience and the information and expertise needed to address the needs and priorities in developing countries. So we are up and running. The Santiago network is also ready to assist you with your technical assistance request. If there is any requirement, any need that your country may identify when it comes to resilient recovery and also to measures to respond to loss and damage, please reach out to us. We offer technical assistance, and we can also guide you into how to structure a technical assistance request so you can benefit also from this support that is part of the architecture that Mr. Mohanty was making reference to. Please allow me to conclude this panel also by thanking all the speakers for their interventions here. And also making some notes on the perspectives that were shared. We've heard also from our panelists and also from the eminent lineup of speakers in the opening ceremony that we're facing increased intensity, frequency, and complexity when it comes to disasters. This complexity and increasing the risks is also damaging and eroding the coping capacities in developing countries. Now, also we have heard that there are rays of hope in the experience that different countries have gathered. And we have heard from Secretary Renato as well, how information has become essential in the context of the Philippines and now is seen as a basic need and a basic right. And that information is something that is made available at all levels. So every single person is able also to understand hazards and to be able to address them. We have also heard on the experience of the Bahamas how it is important also to have an authority that is specifically dedicated to go throughout the full cycle of a disaster, and that also coordinates with an interministerial committee. So the institutional setup is in place to make sure that this is addressed comprehensively. and that also addresses all the different spheres and levels of disasters. Also, we've heard from India and the experience that's been shared, how important it is to have resources, and this earmarking of the resources in the national funds dedicated to disasters that can effectively tackle recovery and also enable the planning aspect. I would like also to conclude by going back to our initial presentation, when we've heard as well some of the figures, and many thanks for showing those, some of the figures on the economic losses, and those figures also can be prevented, not only in terms of the economic losses, but also in terms of the non-economic losses that sometimes also take lives, they take culture, and they take also the intangible capital of countries. For that, planning becomes essential because also readiness and preparedness before the disaster strikes is really the space where the most lives can be saved, and also the space that provides agency to the countries and to the communities affected. And we have seen several examples of agency in this panel. I would like to invite finally our panelists if they have one final reflection that they would like to leave the audience with. And on that note, we will be closing this plenary session. Perhaps starting from my right.
Yeah, so one very important thing is to recognize recovery and reconstruction as a distinct field within the disaster management, and which has its own requirements and which has its own demands of specialization. And it should not be mixed up with the other parts of disaster management. If recovery has to grow, that purity, pristineness of the discipline needs to be underscored. The second part is that at the national level, the recovery and reconstruction should be clearly recognized that this is an important part of disaster management, which has its own place and which must be practiced, institutionalized just after the relief phase is over. And the third part is that the international frameworks, Sendai framework, the recovery has not been given the fairest space. No, it's just mentioned along with preparedness. It's time that recovery should be given its due space in the international frameworks, and it should really be elaborated. Its demands need to be specified very, very clearly. Thank you very much.
Many thanks for that takeaway. We move now to Secretary Renato.
Well, let me reiterate the core lessons from the Philippines. Prevention and preparedness would be the first line of defense. Building forward better transforms recovery into resilience, and financing rooted in equity and transparency is vital for enabling action. Most importantly, though, we can really become victors over disasters and not victims if we bond together and work together to help one another.
Many thanks for that reflection. Victors over disasters, that's the spirit. We move now to the Bahamas for a final reflection.
Yes, thank you. I think for the Bahamas, Hurricane Dorian demonstrated the human cost of maintaining the status quo. And it revealed not only the scale of devastation for small island developing states like the Bahamas that we can face, but also the gaps in the financial preparedness. And I think my colleague touched on it with the financing. And in response, I could tell you, as we did, we have to be strategic and deliberate in what we do. And we're moving beyond just trying to be reactive, even though we're responding, but we embedding that proactive disaster risk in everything that we do.
Many thanks for that, the strategic and deliberate over being reactive. Many thanks. Sujit, one final takeaway?
Thanks, final. I mean, what can I say? And let's just do it. I think this is the time that we just have to, start. The sense of urgency is really required. We have spent 10 years of work on Sendai framework implementation. We know, I think we are doing well, but at the same time, the gaps are still there. So we have another 5 years. We just have to really push it hard. Somebody said, recovery is the strategic entry point to resilience, to prevention. That's what we should remember, and we should just, go ahead and do it, with all our might.
Thank you for that final reflection. Let's just do it. We have the information, and we have exemplary cases here on how it's been done and how can be done on the way forward. Many thanks, everyone. We're closing exactly on time. We have 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I just wanted to mention, because you come from the loss and damage area, loss and damage fund is certainly an opportunity for expanding recovery. And we definitely look up to the loss and damage fund for increasing the scope of recovery, bringing so many things within the recovery. Thank you.
Many thanks for that, and thanks for speaking also of the institutional arrangements in place. Thanks, everyone, also for participating in this session, and we move forward with the rest of the program. We would like also to invite you to some of the sessions taking place as well, which are part of this conference. Just to indicate you also where these sessions are taking place so you can get there. It's in the building right in front. There are follow-up sessions as well, which are part of the program. And these sessions, I don't have the name of the rooms. I think it's room Genf. Yes, that is right. It's right in here. You have the sessions here. Also, a kind invitation to please visit and to continue engaging in the program of this conference. Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your days. Thanks to the panel. Thank you.